Since
And
when?
we ended up having like the coolest conversation. Like we talked about life.
That's from us.
And we just kept chatting and we just talked about life and it just got real and I just enjoyed the ride. And she started telling me her story and I told her about what I got going on with Truth and Comedy. And I told her, I said, you gotta come up and do my show. And she was like, yeah, I got a story to tell. So she called me this week. She was like, how much time I got? Because I got a lot to tell. And I was like, man, don't you worry, you do your thing. So if y'all don't mind, I told her she got free reign tonight, if that's okay. Is that all right? All right. So without further ado, let's make some noise for Miss Wanda Allen.
Good evening, everyone. All right, I've got a story that I want to share with y'all tonight. It's a very tragic story, a story that was very traumatic for me, an event that happened in my life. I was 38 at the time. I was working for an international moving company by day. I was going to school to be a medical assistant at night. And I met this guy at this automotive repair shop. His name was Yori. Yori was 24 years old. And Yori was a drug dealer. We exchanged phone numbers that day. He called me a few times. We went out on a few dates, went to shop pool. We went bowling, we went to the movies, and normal stuff. So over the course of 2 years, he wound up moving in with me. And I lived on Fair Oaks and Park Lane at that time. The main thing about Dallas, that street at one point rolled. It was the hottest block in the city. We used to call it the $1 Million Street. But if you're selling drugs, the number one rule is supposed to be you don't sell drugs where you lay your head at. So, okay, I got this nosy neighbor. Her name is Michelle. And I mean, me and her cool. Michelle know everything that's going on the block. She know more about what's happening in your house than you do. So on this particular day, I come home, I pull up in the parking lot. I'm tired, I've been working all day. I've been in class. First thing I see is her. So I'm sitting there rolling my eyes as I grab my purse and my bag and stuff and start to get out of the car. So here she comes, all chocolate. Chocolate, Yori was selling dope out of your house today. Yori was serving the chicken heads through the fence. Police was out there. So by the time I get to my door, I'm like livid. And I mean, me and Yori, we never really fought, We would have different little arguments or whatever. But whenever I wanted him out of my house, I would call my homeboys up. I'd be like, Black, come get this boy out of my house. So Black, Henry J, and Luke would come over. Be like, man, get your shit. Chocolate wants you out of the house. He'd look at me, he'd look at them. He'd go grab his shit, he'd leave. About 2 o'clock in the morning, a couple days later, he would always come back. He'd be calling, knocking on the door. Come on, baby, let me in. Man, why you do me like that? Man, I love you. Man, I would never do nothing to hurt you. You don't have to call your homeboys. Man, that shit's embarrassing. And I'd done it, 3 or 4 different times over the course of 3 or 4 years. So like I said, on this particular day, I'm pissed because of everything Michelle just told me. So I go in the house, I'm cussing, I'm yelling, I'm screaming, and he's, hey, babe, as I'm coming through the door, and I'm like, hey, babe, shit, and I'm going off on him. Next thing you know, a push goes to a shove, a slap, and we on the floor tussling. And at one point, he pins me down, and I literally cannot move. And I just headbutt him as hard as I could to get him up off of me. And at this point, he bit me, literally bit my nose off. But I didn't know, I knew I was hurt, but I didn't know what the injury was. I felt a burning in my face, blood was spurting from my face, and he jumped up and he was like, look what you made me do, look what you made me do. I'm like, get out, get out. I need to call the police, I need to call ambulance. And he's like, no, I need to go to the hospital with you. And I'm like, no, they're gonna arrest you. And even though, of course, I wanted him arrested, but I didn't want to see this transpire. So he finally leaves. I call 911, and I call my niece, and I tell my niece, call my sons, have them meet me at Presbyterian Hospital. And she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, just meet me at the emergency room, and I hang up. I'm scared, I don't wanna be alone. So I go to my neighbor's door, because I mean, she's literally right, I open up my front door, her apartment door is right here, and her living room window is right here. So I'm banging on the door, bloody hands, banging on her window. Michelle. And I know she's in there, because 20 minutes earlier, we were just talking in the parking lot. But she's not answering. And I'm screaming, Michelle, open the door, please open the door. She don't answer, so I turn around and I go back into my apartment. And it's at this point that I see a piece of my nose on the floor, and it still has the earring in it. And I pick it up, and I'm crying, I'm shaking, I guess I'm in shock, you know. And I go to the kitchen, I rinse it off with cold water, I get a baggie, I put it in the baggie, and I fill it with ice. And I go to the bathroom to look at myself. And what I saw was this whole part of my nose was peeled back, because the part that separates your nostrils, that had been severed. And this whole piece was pulled back, and blood was just spurting out, just spurting everywhere. And I'm screaming, I'm nervous, I'm waiting on the ambulance, I'm pacing the floor, and I'm trying to hold that bag with the ice and that piece of my nose in it to slow the blood. And I hear the ambulance come up. So I go out the door to the parking lot to meet them. So when they get out, they look at me, and I could tell both of them were aghast. The lady literally had a look of disgust in her face. And so as the guy's asking me what happened, and he's getting the step stool for me to climb in, I hear her whisper to him, I'm not gonna touch her. You don't know in this area, she might have AIDS. Oh my God. And I'm looking at her as I'm climbing in, and he goes around and begins to take off, and she moves as far away from me as she can. She doesn't do nothing to try to stop the bleeding. She doesn't do anything to try to, bandage it, to clean it, anything. She's just staring at me, and I'm staring at her. Thank God it was just a couple of blocks down the street to Presbyterian Hospital. So we get there, they take me into the emergency room, and the nurses are hooking me up to IVs. The police are coming in, they're asking me questions, they're taking pictures of me. And I'm just in horror, I'm answering the questions, I'm telling him all the places I think he could be, I gave him his first and last name, told him the kind of car he drives and everything. And so at this point, I'm just waiting on the doctor to get there, because they tell me they don't have a plastic surgeon that's on staff right now, that he's on call, and he'll be there shortly. So eventually my son and my niece get there. My son comes in, and he just screams, Mom, and runs to my side. My niece comes through the door, and she literally just faints. And I'm just looking at her, and I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed, and I'm thinking, my God, what must I look like? That she is literally passed out. So now the nurses are getting her, and they trying to, bring her back to, which later on she told me it wasn't the sight of me, but that the smell of blood was so thick in the room that it took her breath. And so it seemed like hours passed before the plastic surgeon finally got there. And I'm sure it probably wasn't hours, but it seemed like it to me. But he got there, he examined me, told me what he was gonna do, and he warned me not to expect too much. He said from the moment that piece was severed, the tissue that was alive began to heal itself. And because the nose doesn't have any large arteries or veins that go through it, he said it's just small membranous tissue. The tissue probably won't reattach itself to get the blood flow going through it. So after that, I guess I just passed out from the anesthesia or whatever. So I wake up the next morning to the sound of the phone ringing. And my youngest son answers the phone, and I hear him cussing, and he slams it down. And I ask him who it is, and he don't tell me, he just runs out the room. And so, a few minutes later, 3 or 4 nurses come in, they're gathering up my stuff, and they move me to another room, where I later find out that it was Yori that had called, that in fact he had been calling all night long. And so my son had them move me to another room with instructions that not to put any phone calls through, don't tell anybody what room I'm in. So I'm in the hospital, I guess, almost a week. And my whole medical assisting class, they came up to visit me. Everybody was very encouraging. But for me, I was embarrassed, I was hurt, I felt humiliated to be, a victim of a violent domestic crime like this. I mean, this person literally mutilated my face. And so the day I was released from the hospital, that morning, the police had came to my room and told me that Yori had been arrested in Mesquite. And so I went home. Well, I get home to discover that my neighbor, after 5 or 6 days, still ain't washed the damn blood off of her window. And she got the nerve to come knocking on my door. Oh, Chocolate, I'm so sorry to hear what happened to you. Girl, me and my son, we heard it, girl. We were so scared, we just couldn't answer you. I'm like, bitch, get away from my fucking door. And why don't you clean the goddamn blood out the window? So I go into the kitchen and get a rag and come back out and clean the blood out the window. Maybe a couple months later, she moves. Thank goodness. 'Cause, I mean, here you are, you the one that started this shit. But when I needed you, you couldn't help. Now that I'm home, you come and telling me about how you and your son, your grown ass son, was sitting in there, and y'all couldn't help me. So, during this time period, this was like during Christmas, like a couple of weeks before Christmas when this all happened. And really that year, I really don't even remember Christmas Day. I mean, I remember me and Yori had put up a Christmas tree, prior to this jumping off, but I don't remember the day itself. But what I do remember is that New Year's Eve. I remember sitting in my apartment, and I was either drinking some wine or some tea, I'm not sure which. But I was very angry at God. I couldn't believe that he allowed this to happen to me. Because I had always been taught that in God's eyes, there are certain things in your life that are either necessary or they're just allowable for you to learn a lesson. This wasn't necessary. And how the hell could this be allowed? To this day, I still can't explain it, how this could be allowable in God's eyes, because I was a good person. I still am a good person. I help anybody. Tell me, I'm a sucker for a story. I'm gonna give you my shirt off my back. I'm gonna do whatever, but And so, but I'm sitting there that New Year's Eve, and I'm going off on God. I mean, I'm going hard. I'm cussing. I'm screaming. I don't give a damn, because I'm getting ready to take every one of these pain pills and every one of these pills to fight the infection that they just gave me. And I'm gonna lay my ass down and go to sleep and fuck the world, okay? My son and his girlfriend came over there. And my son was like, Mama, man, come over here to our apartment with us, man. You ain't gotta be alone. It's New Year's Eve, Mama, man, I can't leave you here by yourself. Boy, go on, I'm good, I'm okay. No, Mama, come on over here with us. No, boy, I'm okay. Go on about your business. Leave me alone, I'm good. So they leave. A couple minutes later, his girlfriend come back to the door. She said, Wanda, don't you do it. She said, I know exactly what's on your mind. She said, but I'm telling you, if you take your damn life, your son will not be able to live in this world without his mom.
That's right.
Don't you dare do it. And she left. And it was in that moment that it kind of snapped me back. Because see, I was so drawn into what I was going through and how I was feeling, but I wasn't thinking about what it would do to everybody around me if I had done that. So I did. But life wasn't easy, you know. Because, I mean, I was a person that prided myself on my looks, you know. I mean, I was a woman, a real thing, you know, sometimes. And to have this scar in the middle of my face, it was very hurtful. It was hard to just go to a grocery store. You know, kids to look at you, they kind of hide behind their parents a little bit. That was hurtful. It was hard to deal with. And so I didn't want to go back to work. In fact, it was months later before I did go back to work. But I did go back to school. And I remember sitting in the classroom one night, and you know, you can smell something rotten, you know. I mean, before you actually see what it is, you can smell it. But as I sat in that classroom that night, I could smell death. I could smell that tissue rotten in my nose. And the tears began to run down my face. And I kept wiping the tears because I didn't want my classmates to see me crying. Because we had cried enough, I mean, you know. So I kept wiping the tears and wiping the tears. But I knew what it was because I'd been putting makeup on it because it was turning black, you know. And so a few days after that, I'm driving down the street, my youngest son's in the car with me. I don't even remember where we were going. But I had this old Cadillac sedan to do. The power steering was out. And you know how it is when the power steering is out. You gotta put both hands in it and use the muscle to turn the corner. So I'm trying to turn the corner, and all of a sudden my hand grazed my nose, and that piece just flew up in the air and just crumbled. And like I said, I don't remember where we were going, but I just started driving straight toward that doctor's office. And I got in there, and he told me, he said, well, you know, I told you that this would probably happen. He didn't tell me that was gonna happen. He said I would probably fall asleep one night and wake up the next morning, it's on a pillow beside me, or, you know, it's in a bed somewhere. But no, I'm driving down the road and I hit it, and it just. So yeah, that was that. So he's taking it apart, it's crumbling on my lap, and I'm just sitting there crying, you know. 'Cause ain't put no makeup on that, you know, it's gone now. And so, as I went back to class, my classmates were, you know, they were very encouraging. One of the girls in my class, who later became my daughter-in-law, she gave me a little note, you know, with her phone number on it, said, you know, if you need to talk, you know, I'm here for you, whatnot. I mean, they were all very encouraging. So, as time went on, I guess a year passed, and we finally went to trial. And I didn't want to testify. A year later, I still could not stand in front of a group of strangers and tell what happened. So I feel like, you don't need me to testify. You got the pictures. I mean, when that district attorney showed that picture of me in that emergency room that night, and he turned it around, it was like an 11x14 picture. And he said, this, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is the face of sheer terror. And when I seen my face, oh my God. So I didn't want to testify. And then of course the doctor had already testified that, you know, the human bite can be as deadly as a snake bite. That because of all the bacteria in the mouth, you know, and because it was in my face, that had I not sought immediate attention, you know, medical attention, that infection could have set up in my brain and I could have died. Mm-hmm. So what do you need me to testify for? But the judge was threatening to hold me in contempt of court. And so eventually I did testify. And they wound up charging Yori with assault with a deadly weapon. The prosecutor moved to classify his teeth as a deadly weapon. Mm-hmm. And the judge, you know, cleared that motion. So they wound up, you know, doing the sentencing phase, asking me what I thought he should be sentenced to, which I don't know. What do you sentence a person to, you know, for a crime like this? But what I did know was that he was young. And if you didn't give him enough time to seriously lay on his back and think about what had happened, what he had done, because I gotta live with this the rest of my life, you know. And so they wound up sentencing him to 11 years. And he did every day of that time. And, when he would come up for parole, the parole board would send me a letter and tell me that he had been denied and that he would do every day of that time. And mind you, during the course of this time, for like probably the next 3 or 4 years that I lived in that apartment, I would get 2 or 3 letters from Yori a day. At first I would read them. And he talked about how he loved me, how he was sorry, how he didn't mean to do this to me, how he would spend the rest of his life trying to make this right, that he still wanted to be with me. And at some point I just stopped opening the letters. But I still kept them. And I still have them to this day. You know, they're in a shoebox, 146 letters in a shoebox. Some of them I know. Because I've always felt like, you know, at the end of your life, people going through your stuff, I don't want them finding old tax, you know, receipts and old, you know, electric bills. I want them to see the love that is a person. Still have those letters,
Yeah.
you know?
That's a good.
And so, okay, so a couple of years passed, and like I say, my son winds up start dating a girl that was in my class. And they have a little baby.
You.
This little girl just smart as a whip. She say, yeah.
Tomorrow.
This
Say
little girl
hey.
just smart as a whip. I mean, she was very observant from the time she was just a little video thing, you know? And I remember she was about 4 or 5 months old, and I was holding her in my arms. And she pushed back away from me. And she kind of tilted her head side to side, and she's staring at my face. And I could tell in that moment that she knew that my face was different. And she reached up with them little bitty old hands of hers. She touched my nose, and then she put her hand at the side of my face. And she laid her head on my chest. And it was in that moment that I knew she was saying to me, it's okay, Mom. It's okay. It's okay. And I mean, even last year, I was getting ready to go to Mexico to get some surgery done on my knee, and I told her I was gonna see a plastic surgeon while I was there. She said, why? And I mean, she got mad, livid mad, jumped up and ran into the room. And she later told me, she said, Nani, ain't nothing wrong with your face. It's the only way I know you. She said, you wear that scar proudly. She said, it's okay, Nani. It's okay. I'm Wanda Allen Ward.